There's a lot in your life that's simply not serving you anymore. Things that slow you down, drain your energy, and hold you back. So the big question is, why are you still carrying all this around? Here's a tough but liberating truth. Not every burden is yours to carry. Sometimes the greatest act of courage isn't yelling or fighting, it's quietly letting go. No announcements, no drama. Cutting off toxic relationships, dropping habits that sabotage you, and most importantly, stopping the endless cycle of living to please other people. Today, I want to teach you something that could completely change the game for you. A core principle of Stoic philosophy: let go of what you can't control. It's simple, it's straightforward, and it might just be the breakthrough you've been needing. Because as long as you're holding on to what hurts you, you're losing the one thing that matters most: your peace. In this video, I'll show you 10 things cluttering your mind, your time, and your energy, how to practically, permanently, and drama-free remove each one from your life. Start today. Start quietly. Because in the end, what you choose to leave behind defines who you're becoming. Are you ready to live lighter, freer, and for yourself? Then let's get started. But before we dive in, I want you to pay attention to this story. It'll help you clearly and deeply understand the wisdom behind what you're about to hear. In a remote mountain village lived a young man named Elijah. He was known for his incredible strength and skill in climbing dangerous mountains, admired by everyone for his persistence in reaching seemingly impossible places. But over time, Elijah began to accumulate beautiful stones, rusty tools, and random objects he found along his journeys, storing them in his backpack out of attachment or nostalgia. Soon, each climb became harder. His backpack grew heavier, and he tired more quickly. One day, while attempting to climb the tallest and most dangerous peak in the region, the weather suddenly shifted. A fierce snowstorm caught him midway up. The path became slippery. The wind threatened to throw him off balance, and at that moment, Elijah realized something critical. His biggest enemy wasn't the storm, it was the heavy load he insisted on carrying. Exhausted and nearly out of strength, Elijah made a tough but necessary decision. He started letting go of everything that no longer served him. He tossed aside the beautiful stones, discarded the rusty tools, and even got rid of some personal items that, despite carrying memories, had lost their practical use in his life. With every item he released, Elijah felt lighter, more agile, and more secure. He was able to regain balance, breathe easier, and move forward. The storm raged on fiercely, but he was no longer weighed down by his past. When the storm finally passed and Elijah reached the mountain summit, he was exhausted but fulfilled. Upon returning to the village, everyone rushed to greet him in amazement. "How did you survive such an intense storm?" With a calm smile, Elijah replied, "Often, it's not the external challenges that hold us back, but the useless weight we insist on carrying. When we let go of what's lost its meaning, we make room for what truly matters." The moral of this story is clear and powerful. In life, we must quietly release what no longer serves us, those things that simply weigh us down without purpose. Often, our greatest obstacle isn't outside, it's within us. When we have the courage to let go of our internal burdens, we find strength, clarity, and our true path. And before we dive into the first lesson, if this kind of content resonates with you, I invite you to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. That way, you'll stay updated on everything that can help you on this transformational journey. Now, let's move on to the first thing you need to let go of: the fear of other people's opinions. Have you ever stopped to think about how many decisions in your life were shaped not by what you genuinely wanted but by the fear of what other people might think? This fear is sneaky. It creeps in quietly, hides behind so-called safe choices, and keeps you from truly being yourself. It's like constantly living on a stage, performing for a critical audience, who, honestly, isn't even paying attention. You know why? Because most people are too caught up dealing with their own insecurities to worry about yours, yet you still get paralyzed. This fear acts like an emotional parasite. It feeds off your dreams, clings onto your back, and whispers in your ear every time you consider doing something new, bold, and authentic. What if they judge me? What if they laugh? What if it goes wrong? Without even realizing it, you change course. You adapt your life to fit others' expectations. You put on masks, change the way you speak, act, and even exist, just to fit a mold that isn't yours. The irony? We spend so much time trying to please people who don't truly matter to our lives that we end up ignoring the one person who should be our priority: ourselves. It's as if our internal compass is broken. Instead of following the north guided by our intuition, we follow the south dictated by society. At work, with friends, on social media, we shape ourselves, hide ourselves, lose ourselves. But today, you have the chance to change that. But what about the real you? The one buried beneath layers of forced smiles, borrowed opinions, and expectations that aren't yours. Sometimes the fear of other people's opinions doesn't shout, it whispers. It disguises itself as caution. It's not the right time. Maybe I'm not good enough. Better to wait a little longer. These are excuses disguised as wisdom, but deep down, they all stem from the same root: the fear of being judged. And while you hide behind these excuses, your dreams remain shelved, stagnant, waiting for a better moment that never comes. If you want to eliminate this fear once and for all, you need a shift in mindset. This is where Stoic philosophy comes in. The Stoics teach us a freeing truth. You can't control what others think about you, but you can, and must, control how you react to it. It sounds simple, but it isn't easy. It takes practice, introspection, courage. It's about learning to live for yourself. Make choices that genuinely make you happy even if they upset others. Because life is far too short to be lived in the shadow of other people's expectations. Looking for a good starting point? Quietly begin eliminating everything in your life that has no real value to you. Things, commitments, and even paths you chose just to please others. Do you still feel obligated to maintain an image? Are you stuck in a career that doesn't fulfill you just because it seemed like the safe choice? Break free. Start small. Say no to that commitment you accepted out of obligation. Choose what feels right to you, even if it looks strange to everyone else. Because every small no to the world can become a big yes to yourself. Do something you've always wanted to do. Something that calls to you, inspires you, but you've put off because you were afraid of what others might think. It might seem small, but every step in that direction is a step toward freedom. I'm not going to lie to you. It won't be easy. Some days, the weight of others' judgments will feel crushing. It'll hurt. It'll be scary. But in those moments, remind yourself of one powerful truth. Every time you choose to live to please others, you lose a piece of who you truly are. It's a slow, quiet, almost invisible death, but it's absolutely real. The good news? It can be avoided as long as you're brave enough to stay true to yourself. So, start today. Start small. Start quietly. You don't have to announce your change to the world. Just quietly let go of everything that doesn't align with who you truly are. Drop what's been imposed on you: expectations, labels, standards, and return to your authentic self. Trust your own judgment. Learn to value what you think about yourself more than what others say. Because, at the end of the day, the only person you truly have to answer to is yourself. As Carl Jung said, freedom begins the moment you stop worrying about what others think of you. 2. Toxic relationships. There's a saying I carry with me. None are so blind as those who refuse to see. Ironically, we often apply this selective blindness exactly where we should see clearly in our relationships. How many times have you gotten used to people who drain you? People who take more than they give, who emotionally suffocate you, yet for some reason, you insist on keeping them around? Yes, I'm talking about toxic relationships, and don't assume they're only romantic. They can show up anywhere, in your family, among your friends, at work. Here's the interesting part. Nobody forces you to keep these connections, yet somehow you stay. You quietly tolerate it, as if stepping away would be some kind of betrayal or sin. As if letting go of someone who harms you would be cruel. But let me tell you something. Ending something that hurts you isn't weakness, it's strength. It might even be the purest act of self-love you can show yourself. We've been taught that maintaining relationships at any cost is a sign of maturity, but real maturity is knowing when it's time to close the door, doing it calmly, quietly, and without guilt. Stoic philosophy points us in the right direction. Don't waste energy trying to control what you can't. And that includes other people's behaviors. You can't control how others act. But you can and should decide who deserves a place in your life. The hardest part? Doing it quietly. But let's be clear, this isn't revenge, pride, or superiority. It's simply the realization that holding on to what hurts you is slowly
You don't have to
giving
announce
up
to
on
the
yourself
world
that you're cutting ties with someone toxic. Just stop watering the relationship. It's like a plant that stopped blooming. You understand the cycle is over. Let it go respectfully and move forward. They go their way. You go yours. No resentment, no noise. Think about this. How many times have you walked away from someone feeling completely drained, exhausted? It doesn't mean that person is bad. Maybe their energy just doesn't match yours anymore. And that's okay. You don't have to carry what no longer fits into your inner garden. Here's the key. Recognize these relationships. To do that, you need to do something simple but profound. Listen to your body, your mind, your energy. If every interaction with a certain person feels like an emotional marathon, if you leave feeling exhausted, confused, drained, then probably you're stuck in a toxic relationship. Admitting this hurts, but pretending it doesn't exist hurts much more. This is where the strategy of silence comes in. You don't need to argue, justify, yell, or dramatize. Just reduce contact. Stop reaching out. Stop being available. No fuss, no explanations. Just quietly step away. And no, that's not cold. It's freeing. Because you're not turning your back on the world, you're finally turning toward yourself. Sometimes self-love isn't loudly saying no, it's quietly saying enough. Want to know how to identify these relationships? It's simple. If seeing a message from that person knots your stomach, if spending time with them leaves you more exhausted than an entire week of work, if you're always the one giving, listening, supporting, and never receiving back, then you already have your answer. Once that's clear, begin the process of stepping away, without guilt, without drama, without needing to justify. You don't owe anything to someone who steals your peace. It's not about being cruel or holding grudges. It's about having the courage to respect yourself enough to stop allowing people to drain the energy that could be used to nurture what truly matters in your life. Ultimately, real maturity means being honest with yourself, It means prioritizing your well-being above guilt, above the fear of hurting someone who's already been hurting you for far too long. Remember this clearly. Some people are like the wind, you feel their presence, but you can't hold on to them. You just need to let them pass. 3. Self-destructive habits. Let's get real for a minute. How many times have you caught yourself repeating behaviors that, deep down, you know are pulling you down? They seem small, almost innocent, but day after day, they're quietly wearing you out from the inside without making noise, without drawing attention. Things that seem harmless, but steadily erode your peace of mind, your health, your energy, and the worst part? You know this, yet you keep doing them. I've been there too. I've fallen into these traps more times than I'd like to admit. They're silent, self-destructive habit zones that seep into your day like a slow, constant drip. And over time they create cracks within you, tiny actions no one sees, but slowly pull you away from the person you want to become. Maybe it's grabbing your phone right when you wake up. You don't even think your hand moves on autopilot. You open a social media app, and suddenly you've lost 20-30 minutes of your morning. Your mind already cluttered, exhausted, before you've even gotten out of bed. And that's just one example. That cup of coffee that becomes an excuse to procrastinate, the conversation you knew you shouldn't have started, the television show that adds no value, but you keep binge-watching to escape, the food you eat, knowing it'll make you feel bad later, yet you choose comfort over health. These tiny, nearly invisible choices accumulate, creating a massive hole in your well-being. It's self-sabotage disguised as routine. Let's be honest, breaking these habits isn't easy. They're deeply rooted. They're familiar. They're comfortable. They act like anesthetics numbing pain, but also blocking your growth. But here's the secret. You don't need to make a big fuss to change. You don't have to promise a revolution or announce to everyone that you're starting fresh. You just have to make different choices, one day at a time. Wake up and decide that today, just for today, you'll break the cycle. Start small. Delete that app. Swap the coffee for a glass of water. Put off the series and take a 10-minute walk instead. Politely refuse that conversation you know will drain you. Because it's in those small daily decisions where your life truly begins to transform. And you know what the hardest truth is? You already know exactly what you need to do. All that's missing now is the courage to actually do it. How many times have you promised yourself you'd change? This time it's for real. Starting tomorrow, I'll begin. But then tomorrow arrives and becomes just another day filled with excuses. Another day of postponed promises and delayed goals. Here's the truth. You're not alone. We've all fallen into this trap. Because change hurts. It takes effort. And most importantly, it means facing everything we'd rather ignore. But this is where a powerful lesson from the Stoics, the ancient Roman philosophers who deeply understood the human soul, comes in. Great transformations don't happen all at once. They start quietly, in the small details. You don't need to make a public announcement. You don't need to loudly declare your intentions for everyone to hear. You just need to begin, in your own time, at your own pace, but consciously. When you catch your hand automatically reaching for your phone for the 1000th time, stop. You don't have to toss the phone out the window, even if it's tempting. Just put it aside. Breathe, stand up, stretch, do something that brings you back to yourself. When you're about to reach for another chocolate bar, honestly ask yourself, do I really need this, or is it just a habit? If it's just inertia, leave the chocolate. That's the point. Real change isn't found in grand gestures. It's found in small, conscious decisions. No drama, no spectacle, Just you, making better choices, moment by moment. Eliminating self-destructive habits doesn't mean you'll become perfect overnight. It doesn't mean you'll win every internal battle on the first try, and that's okay. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be honest with yourself and develop a simple but powerful strategy: silence and consistency. Like a drop that quietly erodes stone over time, eventually, results show up. Even if you don't notice right away, something inside you has already begun to shift. Remember this: what seems like a small effort today could be the seed of a major victory tomorrow. It's like planting a seed. At first, nothing happens, but one day, without warning, it blooms. Next time you identify a habit that harms you more than it helps, don't postpone it, don't explain, don't dramatize. Just let it go, quietly, step by step, drop by drop. As Epictetus once said, true change doesn't make noise, it simply happens. 4. The desire to control everything. Have you ever felt like if you're not in absolute control of everything around you, your world will just fall apart? Take a breath. I get it. We cling to this need for control as if our survival depends on it. As if planning every step, predicting every mistake, and calculating every detail will finally make life cooperate. As if it's possible to live like a perfectly tuned machine without mistakes, without surprises, without pain. What an illusion. But we keep trying anyway, stuck in this exhausting mental cycle, trying to control everything and everyone, convinced that with enough effort, everything will go our way. Spoiler alert, it won't. And you know what's worse? The more you try to control, the more out of control you feel. More anxiety, more frustration, more heaviness. It's an invisible trap. And here's the harsh truth. This desire for total control is a prison you've built yourself, brick by brick. Fueled by the belief that if you're strong enough, smart enough, constantly alert, nothing will ever go wrong. But then life steps in and reminds you it doesn't play by your rules. Stoic philosophy offers a freeing truth. Don't waste energy trying to control what isn't up to you. Yet that's exactly what we do, isn't it? We try to control the weather, people's opinions, how others behave, and the outcomes of our efforts. We try to hold back the tide with our bare hands. And when everything inevitably slips away as it always does, we feel like failures. But the failure isn't yours. It's in your expectations, in the illusion of control. So hear me out. Maybe you need to let go, not out of weakness but wisdom. Because letting go of what isn't yours to hold is the only way to grasp what truly matters. Focus on what's within your control, your attitude, your choices, your response to events. The rest, let it go. Release the burden of trying to control the uncontrollable. Drop the rigidity that only hurts you. Let go of the guilt when things don't go as planned. Because living to control everything is like rowing against the current, wearing yourself out, while life is just asking you to trust and flow with it. And yes, it might seem counterintuitive, but sometimes the greatest demonstration of strength is knowing when to stop fighting against things that aren't in your hands. The invisible weight you're carrying. Now, picture this. You're walking around with a backpack. Every time you try to control something beyond your reach, a situation, a person, an outcome, you place a stone inside this backpack. At first, you barely notice. It's just a slight annoyance, easy to ignore. But over time, these stones pile up, and one day, without realizing it, that backpack becomes unbearable. It crushes you. Let me ask you, why keep carrying what was never yours to hold? Wouldn't it be smarter and healthier to open that backpack and remove what's not yours? Free up space for what truly matters. The things you actually control. Your emotions, your attitude, your choices. Let go of the rest. For a long time, I was also trapped by this obsession with control. If I had a meeting, I'd imagine every uncomfortable question that might come up. If I was going out with friends, I'd worry about the place, the weather, the timing, everything. It was exhausting. And you know what's crazy? Most things that kept me awake at night never happened. All my attempts to anticipate outcomes only increased my anxiety, not my control. That's when I started letting go, little by little. No dramatic revolutions. I simply decided to trust the process more. And guess what happened? Life continued unpredictable, chaotic at times, surprisingly light at others. But I felt better, lighter, more present, freer. Because I had finally stopped carrying what wasn't mine to bear. Now listen. Trusting life doesn't mean being passive. It doesn't mean sitting around doing nothing. It's acting consciously and accepting with maturity that not everything is in your control. And that's okay. Letting go of control is an act of courage. It's understanding you don't need to master every variable to live well. It's allowing the unexpected. It's making room for new experiences. It's opening the path to peace. So, quietly eliminate this need to control everything. Let go, without fear, of the burden that's holding you back. As Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, true control comes from letting go of what cannot be controlled. Remember this, sometimes letting go is the most powerful act of self-control you can practice. 5. Unrealistic expectations. I don't know about you, but I've spent a good chunk of my life thinking I had to be perfect. No one explicitly told me this, but it was there, floating in the air. Hovering in the conditional praises, the well-intentioned comments, the approving looks that came only when I did everything just right. It was in the quiet comparisons to others, the pressure disguised as pride, the fear of disappointing those who expected so much from me. And you know what I've learned after years of trying to meet everyone's expectations? That the pursuit of perfection is an invisible prison, a bottomless pit you're trying to fill with a bucket full of holes. You never get there, it's never enough, and all you're left with is exhaustion and frustration. The cruelest part? Many of these expectations aren't even yours. They've been placed upon you by others, family, friends, teachers, society. In your attempt to be better, you accepted them all, without question, as if meeting those goals equaled your worth. As if that were the only way you'd be deserving of love, respect, belonging. But answer me honestly, how many times have you felt like a failure for not achieving something you didn't even truly want? Maybe you're trying to be the perfect professional, the ideal partner, the always available friend, the exemplary child. And when you fall short, because everyone falls short, you feel like you're the mistake. These unrealistic expectations end up weighing more than the actions themselves. It's like running a marathon with a backpack full of rocks. Sure, you move forward, but painfully, with guilt. Dragging your feet. What's the point of reaching the finish line if you've lost yourself along the way? This is where Stoic philosophy steps in like a breath of fresh air. The Stoics teach us you can't control what others think of you. You can't guarantee life will reward your efforts. You can't predict if you'll be applauded or ignored. But you can and should control how you react to it. That changes everything, because the secret isn't carrying more. It's letting go of what was never yours to carry. Let go of the burden of unrealistic expectations. Let go of the need to constantly prove yourself. Let go of the idea that you're only worthy when you're perfect. You weren't born to please everyone. You were born to live. And living, my friend, demands lightness. It demands the courage to say, "This isn't mine. I don't have to carry it." So, the next time you feel like you're suffocating under the weight of expectations, take a deep breath and choose to put the load down. Not because you've given up, but because you finally understood that perfection isn't the path, freedom is. Expecting less from yourself, from others, doesn't mean you're settling. It means you're freeing yourself. You're no longer trapped under the crushing pressure of always having to meet expectations. You're no longer trying to fit into molds you didn't even create. You're simply living, moving forward, breathing. But I know this liberation doesn't happen overnight. No one wakes up and throws all their expectations out the window. It's a process, and like any process, it starts small. Think of it like clearing out a closet you've cluttered over the years. First, you honestly assess it. You see what no longer fits. You notice what you're keeping out of attachment, guilt, or habit. Like that shirt you haven't worn in years but still think, "I might need this someday." Deep down, you know you never will. Expectations are the same way. Many you're carrying aren't even yours. They were placed on you by family, school, society. And you, wanting acceptance, wanting to be good enough, just took them on. Start there. Eliminate what doesn't belong to you. Then look at your own expectations and honestly ask, are these realistic, or are they slowly destroying me? You don't have to carry them all. In fact, you can't carry them all, and that's okay. Want a practical step? Change the way you talk to yourself. Instead of, "I need to do everything perfectly," try, "I'll do the best I can with what I have right now." It seems simple, but it's revolutionary, because it makes room for mistakes which are human in growth without the crushing pressure to always get it right. Another important point: be careful about how much you share. Avoid telling everyone all your plans. The less noise you make, the fewer expectations others set for you. And the less obligated you'll feel to meet them. Because ultimately, external expectations are just that, noise. And you have every right to turn that volume down. Quietly let go of what doesn't serve you. You'll notice things start flowing more naturally, more lightly, more authentically. Letting go of expectations isn't giving up. It's wisdom, it's maturity, it's courage. Instead of focusing on what you should be, focus on what you genuinely want, on what's within your control, on what moves you. Fewer expectations, more freedom. Remember this clearly: the less you expect, the lighter you become. 6. The need to always be right. Have you ever noticed this habit, almost an obsession of needing to always be right? To be the person who has all the answers, to prove your point at any cost. It's as if every conversation were a battlefield, and your victory depended on convincing the other person you're right and they're wrong. But here's the cruel truth: this battle isn't even with others, it's with yourself. Because deep down, every time you insist on having the last word, what you're really doing is trying to convince yourself your worth depends on it. That if you're wrong, you'll be seen as weak, foolish, less capable. And honestly, isn't that exhausting? Because I'll tell you this, I'm tired of this endless chase for validation, tired of feeling like if I'm not always right, I lose something. Tired of turning every interaction into a performance test. We learn from a young age that being wrong means failure, that not knowing something is embarrassing. Social media, school, family gatherings, they all reinforce the idea that you have to be right all the time. But let me share a secret with you. Sometimes, being right is the least important thing in life. Stoic philosophy teaches us a freeing truth. You can't control how others perceive you. You can say all the right things, argue logically, present facts, and still be misunderstood, rejected, or ignored. So what's the point of this fight? What are you really winning? An invisible medal? A briefly inflated ego? Is it truly worth the emotional drain? Every time you jump into an argument just to prove you're right, it's like adding another stone to the bag you're carrying. One more, and another, and another. Until eventually, that backpack becomes unbearable, and one day you find yourself wondering, why am I so exhausted? The answer? Because you're wearing yourself out over something that has no real value. So next time you feel that urgency to prove you're right, take a breath. Stay silent. Not out of weakness, but out of wisdom, out of freedom. It's like finally letting go of a pen you've been gripping for hours without realizing it. When you let go, relief comes, lightness returns. The same goes for the need to always be right. When you release that burden, you realize you were fighting a battle you never wanted to fight in the first place. And the most beautiful part? You discover the peace you've been seeking wasn't in victory, it was in silence. How to let go of the need to always be right. So, how do you let go of this need? How do you release that almost automatic impulse to have the last word, to constantly prove a point? First, accept that you don't need to know everything. You don't have to have an opinion on everything. You don't have to be a walking encyclopedia, carrying the weight of always needing to be correct. It's okay to be wrong. It's okay to say, I don't know. You're not competing in a knowledge championship. Start by truly listening. Not listening just to respond, not to find a hole in someone else's argument, but to understand. Because there's a huge difference between hearing and listening. Hearing is biological, listening is an art. When you listen with presence, with humility, the anxiety to make your point disappears. The need to prove you're right simply loses its purpose. Then you start experiencing something rare, intentional silence. Yes, silence. Sometimes, the most powerful argument is not needing to counter-argue at all. It's simply allowing the other person to have the last word without feeling defeated. Not every conversation needs a winner. Not every dialogue needs to end with applause. Because ultimately, winning an argument isn't the same as having peace. So let me ask you, is always being right really worth your tranquility? Is it worth sacrificing your energy just to feed your ego? Next time you're in a conversation and feel that urge to correct someone or impose your viewpoint, take a breath, let go of the pen, let it go. The peace that follows is more valuable than any fleeting victory. And if it helps, remember the Stoics. They understood centuries ago what most of us are still learning today. True wisdom isn't about winning every battle, it's knowing when not to fight at all. As Seneca said, true knowledge isn't about showing strength, but about recognizing when it's unnecessary. Letting go of this internal war isn't losing. It's perhaps the first step toward truly finding yourself. 7. Digital noise. Have you ever noticed how much noise surrounds you? And no, I'm not talking about your neighbor drilling into the wall or cars honking outside. I'm talking about a more subtle noise, more dangerous. The noise you carry in your pocket, the noise you hold in your hands, the noise you consume through your eyes. Endless notifications, non-stop messages, infinite scrolling, reels, Videos, likes, comments, alerts, sounds, lights. Everything seems designed for one purpose: to distract you, to keep you on edge, to drain you. And the scariest part? You think you're in control, but it's actually digital chaos controlling you. We live in an era where silence has become a luxury, peacefulness has become rare, a calm mind has become a precious commodity. But you know what? That luxury isn't as unreachable as it seems. The first step is clearly seeing what's stealing your attention, and then comes the hard part, accepting that you need to quietly eliminate what's draining your energy. And yes, it's possible, but it won't be comfortable. Because digital chaos doesn't vanish just because you close an app. That would be like trying to extinguish a fire with a glass of water. You need to be intentional. You need to be radical. Like the Stoics, who understood true peace doesn't come from the external world, it comes from within. And to access it, you must bravely eliminate distractions. So let's cut to the chase. What should you start quietly eliminating right now? 1. Unnecessary social media. Yeah, I know it sounds cliché, but honestly, do you really need to keep up with your neighbor's cousin's friend's life from school? The more accounts you follow, the more noise you create, more comparisons, more anxiety, more distractions. You don't have to abandon social media completely, but you do need to declutter, cut back, filter. Think of it like cleaning out a closet you forgot existed. Remove things you've never used, things that no longer make sense, and things that are just taking up space. 2. Notifications. All of them. Why are you letting your phone interrupt you every 2 minutes? Every buzz, every alert steals your attention, it shakes your focus, it drains your mental energy. Turn off everything that isn't essential. At first, you'll probably feel anxious. You'll think you're missing something, but soon, you'll realize it's the opposite. You were missing yourself. And when silence returns, when you realize that you're the one choosing when to connect, not your phone, the feeling is relief. It's freedom. It's coming home. The truth is simple but powerful. Your focus is your most valuable asset, and the world is fighting to steal it from you. So quietly remove the noise. No announcement, no drama, just clean it up. You'll discover what truly matters once the noise stops. 3. The fear of missing out, the modern villain. Have you noticed how you always feel like you're missing out on something? If you're not online, connected, up to date, it seems like you'll fall behind, missing something crucial. That's the infamous FOMO, fear of missing out, which has become a silent epidemic. But here's an uncomfortable truth. What truly matters isn't on your screen. It's around you, in the people you love. In those simple moments you don't even notice because you're caught up in the latest meme, the newest notification, the endless scrolling. This fear of missing out is a trap. And the more you try to be everywhere at once, seeing your feed, stories, groups, trends, the further away you get from the one place that truly matters, the present. It's a harsh truth, but necessary. The more you try to embrace the digital world, the more you lose from the real one. But something powerful happens when you start cutting out this noise. When you let go of this fear, you start to listen, to feel, to notice. You begin reconnecting with yourself, with your ideas, with your thoughts, with your priorities, the ones you set aside amidst the avalanche of information. This is where Stoic philosophy powerfully steps in. You can't control external events, but you can decide how you react to them. And one of the wisest reactions you can have is choosing silence. Not silence as the absence of sound, but silence as the presence of awareness, as clarity, as focus, as choice. Choose digital silence as a sacred space, a moment just for you, a place where you listen to yourself instead of being bombarded by voices that don't know you or care about you. Because, ultimately, that's the true luxury of our time, the peace of being present. As Gandhi said, peace doesn't come when the noise disappears, but when you decide to listen to yourself. So, listen, before the noise consumes what's left of you. 8. Negative thoughts. Have you ever noticed how negative thoughts creep into your mind? They don't knock on the door. They sneak in silently. They slip in casually. And before you realize it, they've taken control. It's like that annoying neighbor who walks in uninvited and somehow thinks they can stay. And the worst part? You hand them the key. Not because you want to, but because at some point you started believing the lies they tell. That they're part of you, that they're inevitable, that you have to live with them. But what if I told you that you can change the locks? Yes, you can. Because these thoughts aren't absolute truths. They're destructive patterns repeated so often they've started to seem real, but they're not. How many times have you caught yourself thinking, nothing ever works out for me. I'll never be able to do it. Everyone else is better than me. And of course, when these thoughts replay day after day without challenge, you start to believe them. And when you believe, you act as if they're true. You sabotage yourself. You limit yourself. You poison yourself. It's like planting a sick tree and then wondering why the fruit tastes bitter. They grew from what you cultivated. But here's the turning point. You're not your thoughts. You're the one who chooses what to do with them. You can't stop negative thoughts from appearing. They'll show up, sure, but you can decide if you'll nurture them or let them go. Your mind is fertile soil. Whatever you plant repeatedly grows, so choose consciously. When that sabotaging thought arises, don't immediately accept it. Question it. Breathe. Change the narrative. Tell yourself, this thought doesn't define who I am, and I don't have to believe it just because it's here. You can change the locks. You can choose what enters and what stays out of your mind. And that, my friend, is the beginning of freedom. The strangest thing about negative thoughts is that even though they don't reflect reality, they feel as real as the ground beneath your feet. They sneak in disguised as absolute truths, and before you know it, they're dictating how you feel, react, and live. This is where Stoic philosophy steps in, with its brutal but necessary simplicity. You can't control everything that happens to you, but you can and should control how you respond. It sounds simple, but the truth is, in practice, we often forget. We allow these mental patterns to take the wheel. And so, we end up reacting automatically, repeating the same pains, the same mistakes, the same blocks. But what if you decided, today, to take back control? The first key? Silence. Yes. Eliminate negative thoughts quietly, without making a fuss, without trying to force them away. Just acknowledge when they appear. Observe, identify, and stop feeding them. The more attention you give to a negative thought, the more it grows, the stronger it becomes. Think of them like a fly buzzing around a room. The more you try to catch it, the more it flies around. But if you stop reacting, it goes away on its own. Second, question them. Every time a destructive thought arises, ask yourself, is this true? Is everything really going wrong, or is my mind just catastrophizing? Most of the time, you'll realize they're distortions, exaggerated ideas, old voices you've never challenged. And if there's a hint of truth in it, great. Use that as a starting point to think of solutions, not to dive deeper into the problem. Third, practice emotional detachment. No, you don't have to become a monk on a mountaintop, but you do need to understand something fundamental. Your thoughts aren't you. Just because something crosses your mind doesn't mean it needs to stay there. Here's the practice. See the thought, recognize it, thank it, and let it pass. Like a cloud drifting across the sky, it doesn't change what the sky is. Negative thoughts don't require drama. They only demand three things: focus, patience, questioning. Because at the end of the day, what you think shapes what you do, and what you do defines who you are. As Brian Tracy once said, thoughts aren't facts, but if you believe them, they become your reality. So choose carefully which thoughts you decide to keep close. Some of them, you need to quietly let go. 9. Physical and mental clutter. You know those days when you wake up feeling like the world is heavier than usual? You try to figure out what's wrong, look around, and realize it's not just a feeling. Your space feels heavy. Your chair has become a clothing rack. Your desk is now storage. Your drawer is jam-packed with stuff you don't even remember why you kept. Then, somehow, your mind feels the same way. Cluttered, overwhelmed, unfocused. I don't know if it happens to you, but it happens to me all the time. When my environment is chaotic, my mind follows suit. That's when we realize a truth we usually avoid. External clutter and internal chaos are far more connected than we'd like to admit. There's something deeply exhausting about clutter, because it doesn't just occupy physical space, it drains your mental energy. Every misplaced object, every forgotten piece of paper, every corner of the house demanding attention, all of it accumulates, creating a type of noise you don't even consciously notice, but you certainly feel. It's that quiet discomfort, that unexplained irritation, that feeling of exhaustion, even when you haven't done much. Then you understand, it's not just your house that's overloaded, it's you. The Stoics, with their sharp clarity, emphasize the importance of eliminating the unnecessary, of focusing on what's essential. And if you really think about it, clutter is exactly the opposite. It's excess, it's distraction, it's holding on to things that no longer serve you. Clutter keeps us from peace, because it ties us down to what should have already gone. And every time you delay removing something, you're still carrying it, even if you don't realize it. You know that feeling of wanting to clean everything up but not even knowing where to start? You don't have to solve it all at once. The secret is to quietly declutter, one step at a time. Start by honestly looking around and ask yourself, do I really need all this? If you haven't used something in months, if you can't remember the last time you touched it, maybe it served its purpose, and now it needs to go. Each small step of letting go is a new beginning. Every space you clear externally opens space within you. Slowly, quietly, you'll start breathing again. But clutter isn't only in what you see. It also lives in how you feel, in what you think, in what you continue to hold on to inside even though you know it should have been released long ago. Because mental clutter works exactly like physical clutter. We collect thoughts, worries, grudges, and expectations. Like someone holding onto broken objects, hoping they'll somehow be useful again. But here's a truth that might hurt and liberate you. Some things just don't serve a purpose anymore, and they never will. Keeping them around only weighs you down. It slows you, it holds you back. So, what should you do? Quietly let them go. No fuss, no explanations, no need to justify it to anyone. Just release a thought, a memory, a worry at a time. The same goes for your physical space, a drawer, a corner, a pile. Because sometimes, silence is the ultimate act of rebellion in a world constantly shouting, and letting go is the cure nobody teaches. If certain people make you feel uneasy, projects drain you, or ideas exhaust you, let them go, without drama, without guilt, without circling around when you already know the way out. Just let them go. Whatever feels out of place in your life often shows what's out of place within you. And here's the beautiful part. When you start organizing the outside, even little by little, clarity also starts arriving on the inside. It's not magic, it's a process, like cleaning out a forgotten drawer and suddenly feeling lighter inside. Because in the end, every item in its right place is one less worry. Everything you release is one step closer to freedom. The Stoics knew this. They didn't accumulate or complicate simple things. They focused on what's essential and let the rest go. So simple, yet so powerful. Living surrounded by physical and mental clutter is like wandering in a dark maze. But when you start releasing what's unnecessary, you realize the exit was always there. You just couldn't see it because of the excess. If you want peace of mind, start now. Organize what's around you. Clean what's within. Let go of what weighs you down. Do it without rushing, without noise, but consistently. Your mind will thank you. As Nelson Mandela once said, when the noise stops, the essential becomes clear. 10. Unnecessary comparisons. Sometimes I wonder, why do you have this habit of comparing yourself to others? And don't tell me you don't. We all do. But honestly, answer me this. How does that actually help you? Comparing yourself to others is like running a marathon against people who don't even know they're competing. Even worse, they aren't even looking at you. Yet, there you are, in your head, timing every step, every stumble, every achievement not yours, but theirs. It's insane. It's like trying to win a singing competition using someone else's voice. It doesn't work. It never will. You have your own melody, your own rhythm, your own pace, yet you insist on following someone else's music. And what seems like an innocent habit slowly erodes your self-esteem, day after day. You wake up feeling behind, thinking you're falling short. That you're not good enough, fast enough, worthy enough. But based on what? On a superficial snapshot of someone else's life, someone who, quite possibly, is also comparing themselves to you. That's what makes it all so absurd. While you're looking at the boat next to you, thinking it's going farther or faster, the person in it is probably looking back at you, feeling exactly the same way. No one is fully living their own journey. Everyone's too busy watching someone else. But life isn't a sprint, it's a voyage. You choose your boat, you choose your stops, you choose your pace. But if you're always focused on others, you'll lose control of your own direction. You'll get distracted, drift off course, and lose yourself. So here's some advice. Stop comparing yourself. And do it quietly. No announcements, no protests, no venting on social media. Just drop this habit like you toss away an old shirt that no longer fits. No one needs to know, but you'll feel the difference. Because comparing yourself isn't just pointless, it's an act of betrayal against yourself. It's like telling your inner self every day, "You're not enough. I wish I were someone else." And that hurts, more than you realize. But here's the good news. You can stop, right now, today, quietly, with courage. And finally, go back to being who you truly are without apologizing for it. Now honestly, think with me. Does this comparison mindset make sense to you? Because to the Stoics, the only valid comparison is with who you were yesterday. That's it, nothing more. So what should you do when that inner voice starts comparing you to someone else? Don't try to silence it, question it. Listen to what it's saying, but don't blindly accept it. Ask yourself, why am I comparing myself to this person? What exactly makes me feel inferior right now? Then, remind yourself of what you've already accomplished. Pause for a moment. Breathe. Reflect on the journey you've already traveled, because it's easy to forget how far you've come when you're too busy looking sideways. If you want a powerful tool against comparison, here it is. Gratitude. Yes, I know, it sounds cliché, but trust me, it's transformative. Be thankful for what you have, for what you've overcome, for who you are today, even if you're not yet where you'd like to be. Because when you focus on what you have, instead of what you lack, something shifts. Comparison loses its grip, and what's left is you, free, present, owning your journey. Life is far too short to spend it competing in an imaginary race with others. Comparing yourself only distracts you from what truly matters, living your life, in your own time, by your own rules. And when you do that, you discover a powerful truth. It's easy being you. It's freeing not having to prove anything to anyone. I want to leave you with a quote that guides me through tough times. When you stop seeing yourself through other people's eyes, you finally discover who you truly are. Thanks for making it this far. If you listened until the end, congratulations. It says a lot about you. You want to grow. You want to change. You want to truly know yourself. And that already puts you on the right path. If this message resonated with you, drop a simple word in the comments, gratitude. That's how I'll know you stayed until the end and that this somehow touched you. If you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. Join us. Stoicism is full of practical, profound teachings you can apply to real life, and I'm here to show you how. Right here, I'll leave 2 more videos filled with Stoic wisdom to help you continue your journey of transformation. See you there. Until next time. And remember, this life is yours. No one else can live it for you.